my channel Rhiartsy. I'm Rhiann and today I'll be sharing my top 10 tips to get you started on creating your very own crochet portraits with confidence. So let's get straight into the video. So tip number 1, start with shapes. Don't go straight into crocheting faces like what I did. It's just disappointing if you just don't know how to do it. I mean, I didn't even know how to draw a face, let alone crochet one.
Keep it simple, stupid. Great advice. Hurts my feelings every time.
I think this is the best way to start you on your journey to making yourself a crochet portrait. I have done a template linked below. So first things first, download the template and print it if you can. Use that as your guide, your size guide. It's a great exercise to focus on your tension and how that affects the flatness of your work, because ultimately when you're doing a portrait or something for the wall, you want it to lay as flat as possible, and your tension very much affects that. How do you take the stitches that you know to create those shapes? It is a great way to problem solve and figure things out for yourself. There is no wrong and no right. Well, right is when it looks like a square, or right is when it looks like a triangle. So yeah, there is a right. So there's no wrong, I should say. And yeah, just experiment and see how you feel doing it. It was really good fun exercise. I did it myself last night and yeah, it was great to go back to basics. I was thinking, oh, I'll be able to do this easy. And it was actually quite challenging. So yeah, it was good. It's worth doing. Anyway, so that's my tip number 1. Tip number 2. You don't need to be a skilled artist to crochet portraits. They're helpful, but they're not necessary in order for you to start creating freeform crochet portraits. It really isn't. So I get asked this question all the time. Do I bother even starting? Because I've never even picked a paintbrush or a pencil, let alone crocheting something like this. I mean, it is diving straight into the deep end, which is why I started this channel, to shed some light and share the knowledge, if that's what you want to call it. So I have been crocheting portraits for about 6 years now, and I did dive straight in at the deep end, went straight for realism. It's not a good idea. So I'm a photographer, and I basically used my own portraiture to inspire my crochet portraits, but it was often in the beginning very disappointing, very frustrating. I just couldn't do it. But I stuck with it. Kind of like it was like swimming in mud. That's what it felt like. But there wasn't really anything around back then for learning these techniques, which is why I started my channel, to share what I've learned and giving you the tools to start on a more sensible journey towards creating your crochet portraits. The point of tip number 2 is to just be more of an encouragement. If you can already draw, fantastic. You're going to have a great head start because you're going to know the proportions of the face. But if you don't have those skills, I didn't have them when I started, and I'm not lying. I really, really didn't. So don't be discouraged. It's more of encouragement rather than tip, that one, wasn't it? Which is fine, because it can be off-putting, can't it? Oh, I'm not artistic. Oh. You can do it. You can definitely do it. Encouragement, yes. What's that off? Is that a film?
Encouragement, yes.
Anyway, right. So that's my tip number 2. So tip number 3, use a printout or your tablet as your size guide. Whatever picture that you're going to be using as your reference, get it to the size you want on your computer or your tablet, whatever you have access to. If you're going to print it out on multiple sheets of A4 if you have to, and tape it together so that you have your size guide in front of you. Or you use your tablet, you use it in viewer mode and just zoom it into the size that you want your crochet piece to be and start crocheting. This is a great way to ensure accurate placement of features like the eyes, the nose and the mouth. And as you practice, your eye for detail will naturally improve. But this is the perfect way to start, especially for beginners. especially for people that haven't got the experience of working with facial proportions in the context of art and portraiture painting and things like that. So if you haven't got those skills prior to trying to crochet a portrait, having a template is definitely the best place to start. So that is my tip number 3. Tip number 4, experiment with abstract portraits. So before you dive headfirst into realistic crochet portraits, get a few abstracts under your belt first. It's going to be much more rewarding, and you're going to learn all the necessary skills and gain some experience ready for when you do your realistic portraits. It's a great opportunity to experiment what textures you like, what size hook you like, what weight yarn you like. Are you going to mix the weights? Are you going to use fluffy yarns? Are you going to, I don't know, are you going to use lots of colour? Are you going to work in rounds and rows? Are you going to turn your work? All these things are vital, really, to figure out what you like. Personally, I don't turn my work. That's one thing I definitely don't do, which is the reason why I have lots of loose ends, which I love, frankly. I do. I just love how it just droops down at the end of the portrait. It's great. Anyway, but I don't turn the work because I don't like how it creates like that ribbed effect on the portrait itself. Or I just didn't like it. But you might like that. So great, you know, this is your chance to experiment when you're doing your abstract to see what it is you do like. When I'm doing my realistic portraits, I tend to stick to a 2mm hook because I find that I can get more detail when I use that size hook. I find it a bit too loose when I use a 3mm hook. I just don't like how it looks. I tend to stick to the same weight yarn. I don't like mixing chunky yarn with DK yarn. My go-to yarn weight is DK. But this is what I'm trying to say. You can figure out what works for you because there isn't no right way. My way isn't the right way. It's just my way. Which is, you know, completely obvious, but I hope you know what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, and honestly, the only stitches that I use when I'm creating my portraits are single crochet, half double crochet and double crochet. Obviously there's slip stitches and picket stitches and chains involved in that as well, but other than that, that's all I use. And it's a shame really because doing all those textured stitches are great and it definitely can be used even with realistic portraits, but it works amazing when you're doing your abstract stuff. And you can, yeah, it's just going to be, you can just really let go and use all those stitches, put them to good use. All that knowledge that you've learned over the years, following those patterns with bobble stitches and shell stitches and whatever else. That's the only stitches I know the names of actually. But you can put that into your abstract pieces. Do you like how it looks? This is up to you to decide. Your chance to experiment and get all that information. And also, don't forget, by doing all your abstract portraits, you're going to be practicing how your tension affects the flatness of your work, you know, and that is so important, you know, and the more you do, the better you're going to get. And the fact that you're doing an abstract portrait will give you the confidence because you're definitely going to have something at the end of it. The easiest way for you to do your own abstract portraits and create your own templates to crochet from is to go out and get yourself an A3 art pad, some crayons and some pencils. That's the simplest way. I'm saying A3 because that just makes it your pieces a little bit bigger. It's easier to crochet your pieces a bit bigger than it is to work small. If that is too intimidating for you, I've already linked 2 portraits for you to use as you want. One is a bit simpler than the other, so start with the more simpler version before you get on to the more curvier intermediate version, I guess. And yeah, have a go. You can use them to inspire your own pieces or you can copy them exact. I really don't mind. So tip number 5, practice individual features. So also linked below, I have an eye study that I sketched on my iPad, and I've turned that into an A4 template so that you can print or use on your tablet as a guide or inspiration to have a go at making some eyes. Eyes are always a good place to start. This is one of the things I actually did do before when I first started doing crochet, portraiture. I did do an awful lot of eyes, and not all of them were great. Some of them were a bit dodgy, but it was great. And now I feel like I'm quite good at doing eyes. One of the things I think I still need to be focusing on is doing noses. That's always the hardest part for me. So honestly, I've still got work to do in this department. There's loads of noses, mouths, eyes all over the internet that you can use as your inspiration, as your template, as your reference, okay? So yeah, go wild. This is an ongoing exercise that we can all benefit from. I certainly need to focus a lot more on my noses, and I'll probably end up turning it into a video so that, yeah, we can work on that together or something. And just a heads up, I will be picking a few of my favourite eyes from the sheets that is linked below, and doing them as a tutorial so that we can work on some together. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, so that's my tip number 5. Focus on individual features before diving straight into the full face. Tip number 6. Choose recognizable subjects. And what I mean by that is choose iconic faces. Marilyn Monroe, David Bowie, you know, the list is endless really. Your favourite actor, your favourite famous painting. Recreate it in crochet, but choose something iconic. Something that loads of people are going to recognize, okay? Because you only have to capture a tiny bit of their likeness or a little hint of their character, and that will make your portrait more recognizable. Okay, so it's good. It'll give you a boost to keep going, especially when you're first starting out. And I think worse than creating, I don't know, your nephew or your niece and ta-da! Who's that? You know, to the mother. It would be awful. The point is with iconic faces is that you don't have to capture them perfectly, but you'll gain a lot of confidence when somebody looks at that portrait and they go, oh wow, and it's Marilyn Monroe, that's amazing. Yeah, I can see it. I can't believe that's crochet. Oh, you're going to feel great. You're going to feel great. So trust me. So that's my point 6. Tip number 7. Stick to monochrome or different shades of the same colour. This is just going to be easier for you to get started. Personally, I haven't got access to a great yarn store where I can get a multitude of flesh tone colours that complement each other and go from light all the way down into the dark shades. I just haven't got access to that. And it's easier to source a bunch of grey colours, whites, blacks, simple. And then you can add a pop of colour here and there if you want to. Why not? Why not? So you can go and get multiple shades of blue and do a portrait with blues, do a portrait with reds, whatever colour, it's up to you. So it's just a good starting point. It takes the pressure off finding all those flesh tones in yarn at your local store, okay? So yeah, there you go. So that's my tip number 7. Tip number 8. Simplify your reference image. Personally, I use my laptop. So the first way that I'm going to show you how to do this is by using a laptop or PC, and you have to have one of those in order to do it this way. So normally I would use Adobe Photoshop, but I didn't want to promote using something that you have to pay for. So I found another photo manipulation program called GIMP, and it's so good. It is just as good as Adobe, and I used it for the first time the other day in order to film this to show you how to do it. And I basically opened up a simple photo of Marilyn Monroe. I went to the tab colour, scrolled down and found posterize, and that is what you want to be doing. That's what I do, so I'm just recommending you to do it. Posterize the image. That basically simplifies the colours, and in doing that it simplifies the shape of the face as well, so it helps you view the face in like a puzzle. It breaks it up into different shapes in order for you to recreate that in crochet. It's just an easier visual to get you going. So I've saved that version and it's linked below if you want to download that and have that as your template to get you started. So if you haven't got access to a desktop computer, so you can't use GIMP and posterize any of your images, then you might want to use your mobile phone and find a photo application there and just have a little play around with the filters. You might find that you can get some similar effects. Another way, if you do have access to a tablet, for this example, I use Sketchbook on my iPad and I just imported the image of Marilyn Monroe and added a layer, and I just started blocking out all of the shaded parts of her face and the highlights, and just started simplifying the colours in it really, and turning her face into shapes that I could easily translate into crochet. So that's an alternative that you could do. All right, it is a little bit more time consuming this way, but it's definitely not impossible and worth having a go if that's all that you have available to you. So that is my tip number 8. Tip number 9, assemble your portrait together step by step. So what I do when I'm creating my portraits is I'll crochet each individual feature first, and then I'll use my printed template and I will position the features that I've crocheted on top just to make sure that the positioning is correct. And I really would recommend that you do it this way, especially if you're not very experienced in proportions of the face and things like that. So it is a very beginner thing to do, but it's also something that, even though I've been doing crochet for 6 years now, crochet portraits for 6 years now, I still, rely sometimes on my reference photo for the positioning of the face. I just do. It's just make sure, especially if I think most of it comes down to time. I haven't really got the time for it to go wrong. That's my life, I haven't got time for it to go wrong, so it's got to be right first time. Further down the line, you're going to be getting so much more experience. You're going to fine tune your eye and be able to naturally, you're just going to develop those skills naturally as you carry on. So you probably will rely less on your reference image. But if not, it doesn't matter. If it gets you the results that you're looking for, then, who's to care? So, that's my tip number 9. So tip number 10, embrace the learning curve. Don't stress about imperfections. It's going to happen. You literally do need to make mistakes in order to learn from them. And that sounds cheesy, I know, but it's true, isn't it? So what I'm saying is that imperfections are a part of the process, and if you don't make mistakes, you're not going to learn from them. There's going to be lumps and bumps here and there, but you can still use an iron on very light heat, by the way. Muggins here has completely ruined portraits, honestly. I'm sorry, I go off on a side rant. So I finished the portrait. It's got a few bumps here and there, and I thought I'm gonna use an iron. I'm gonna flatten that all out. It's gonna look lovely. I've put it on to full heat, and I've just gone like that and over it, and I have squished the life out of the crochet. There's no texture, and it's gone slightly shiny. I've done it all, and sometimes I still make that mistake. I've even tried washing it after I flattened the life out of it to bring something back, but yeah, it doesn't work. So if you do want to iron your piece at the end, just make sure that you have it at a sensible heat and you work on the back, okay? And just a light press is fine, okay? There is one little tip that I would just like to finish up on, and it might be something and nothing, but I know that it was something that really stumped me back when I was starting on my journey. So when it got to the point where I was filling in the cheek sections of my portraits, I felt like I was doing a great job of the eyes, the nose and the lips. But then when I was like connecting them all and trying to blend and do the cheeks and all that, at that point I was adding too many stitches and it was starting to pucker and it just looked horrendous. And no iron would fix it, trust me. But all I had to do was skip stitches and I was using, a lot of the time I'm using double crochet in US terminology, by the way. So I would lean my stitches across and just skip some and slip stitch into the next section, cut and rejoin and keep on going with that. So I'll insert a clip there of me doing that. By doing that, it just made my life much easier, but it just took me a long time to figure that out, and I don't know why. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because it just seemed to click for me at that point. And hopefully it will just be a helpful tip or extra tip, a tip within the tip to like make things a little bit easier when you're doing your crochet portrait. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my top 10 tips and it's given you the courage and the confidence to just make a start on your own crochet portrait projects. If you'd like me to elaborate on any of the points that I've made in this video, just leave me a comment below and I will put it on the list for future video ideas, okay? But yeah, thank you so much for watching this far. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. And just a big thank you to all my current subscribers and to all that have watched this video and supported my channel this far. I really, really appreciate it. So yeah, see you guys in the next video. Bye!